All right, well, then welcome to GamesBeat University. I am Gordon Bellamy. We're going to have a few hours of fantastic talks and insights and learning from inside of the games industry. We have the good fortune to have a number of top-tier executives and creators who are going to come together. Some will be sitting with me. Some will be having their own talks. It's going to be a lot of fun this afternoon. Feel free to ask us questions on Twitch, on the app. We all have it running on our phones. And we're going to start right in the deep end of the pool with a very exciting VR startup based in Los Angeles, stress level 0. We have Brandon Laatsch, our CEO, and we have Dan Fiden from FunPlus, a global leader in interactivity and also an investor in this company. And they're going to spend 20 minutes talking a little bit about your voyage. So without further ado, here you go, Dan.
Cool. Thanks.
Hey, you're very welcome.
Hey.
Hey, good.
Here we are.
We've been talking in the back, so it's odd to start off right now, but for the audience, good
Excellent.
to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Wow, I'm so happy we ran into each other here on stage. I'm Dan. Like Gordon said, I'm from FunPlus, and we are a mobile game publisher and developer, and we also have done quite a few investments across the game industry. Prior to that, I've worked as a developer and an investor in the game business this is year 20 for me.
Year 20.
Yeah.
This is for me. This is year 6. Yeah, starting in 2010, launched a channel on YouTube called the Freddie W channel. Sort of started off our internet voyage of new media creation. For a number of years, made 3 different YouTube channels, built various sort of like a gamer culture infused audience on YouTube, and always had this itch ever since I was young to get into game development. It was always sort of split between filmmaking and game development. Originally, when I was in tangent, but originally when I was in 9th grade, we had to do like a career project, right? And the book we had, the textbooks, it was public school, so the textbooks were 30 years out of date, and they said that if you wanted to do game development, you had to speak Japanese and move to Japan. And I'm like, crap, I don't know either of those things, and I'm already like pretty far along in high school.
9th grade and your career's over.
Yeah, and so I'm like, all right, I'll do filmmaking instead. So out to LA, did filmmaking, and then in 2014 transitioned to game development. Started Stress Level 0, and at the same time VR was becoming a thing. We kept finding we were going to make normal games, but we just kept seeing our interests being pulled towards VR, and so with the announcement of the Vive, since we had track controllers, we pulled the trigger and decided to go full time into VR game development, and the result was Hover Junkers, which came out 4 months ago.
Well, I wanna dig in a little bit on as an entrepreneur. I mean, you mentioned the Freddie W channel and the other YouTube channels. These were pretty big businesses for you. I mean, you guys you had a very large audience. You were making significant revenue, and making the decision to kind of jump into something that you hadn't done professionally before, like making games, is kind of a radical decision. Was there a single moment that made you realize now is the time when I want to do it?
I think it was always trying to stay grounded in that. What brought us any success in whatever we were doing was following what we were passionate about, following what we were creating. We always said people like to look at how much luck is involved in having a successful channel, and what we always described as the luck that we had was that our creative sensibilities happened to be something that had a large potential pool of viewers. Like, I always liked action-oriented gamer culture infused shorts. That's what I like to make. And then video game wise, we like making action games. So there happens to be a pretty large potential audience for those things, which is fortunate, because had our passions been to do pottery or something like that, then there wouldn't be that big of an audience. But in the end of the day, you can only do what you're passionate about. You can only do, keep pulling the 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and just grinding at it if it's both your career and your hobby and everything that you're consumed by. So kept grinding, kept doing it, and transitioning from the video production to the game development wasn't that difficult, because the sensibilities was always taking advantage of technology, and as technology evolved, as computer software evolved to make video production more easy and accessible, it also evolved to make game development more accessible. And so a lot of the artists that we had at the time they'd picked up a lot of the 3D software with us for doing VFX, and so for them to pick up Unity and do game development was an easy transition. And frankly, the people that we like to work with are people that always want to learn new things, and so getting the opportunity to pick up new software, doing that excites them rather than scares them.
And to kind of go along on that thread, one of the things that when we first met, I asked about quite a bit that I thought was a little bit surprising was, as a first game project, it seems as though you guys took on one of the most ambitious things that you could think of. Right, you were building for a platform that at that point was not commercially available. The way that you build for VR is substantially different than any other video game platform that's ever existed before. On top of that, you were one of the only, if not the only, synchronous multiplayer game that was in development for launch of Vive. And it was a first-person shooter, which is, when it comes to synchronous multiplayer games, one of the harder ones to do. Was there a point when you guys kind of said, hey, this is going to be kind of a hard game to build, we shouldn't do it, maybe we should do something else? Or did you just kind of plow ahead with it because that's what you wanted to build?
Fortunately for the project, that point came when we were already past the point of no return. So it's always a balance of I don't know. I always like, when I'm working on projects, I like to talk about them a lot to people, because almost by setting the expectations by people that I respect around me, it kind of keeps me honest in terms of having to cash some of those checks, having to actually come through with that project, because otherwise people ask, like, hey, you were talking really passionately about this thing. Did you ever do it? And the answer has to be yes more times than it is no. And so we committed early on. We were speaking with Valve. We said we wanted to make a multiplayer title. One of the big challenges was early on, the development hardware was hard to get our hands on. So in the first 2 months of development, we had no headsets. And then after the first 2 months, we got one headset. And so we were testing, we were trying to build multiplayer with only one headset, and that was a challenge. And then finally, when we got both headsets, we were able to just we were focusing on art assets at the time, and we're able to build up the rest of the project and go from there.
So, one of the things that we've been talking about a little bit today, and we announced today, is that we invested in Stress Level Zero. Why did you decide to look for funding in the first place? What did you feel like financing would get you? You guys were well into development by the time that you and I first met. Was there a specific reason that you wanted to look for financing?
Yeah, so the time that we were actually doing the investment was actually when we were at the 11th hour of release. It was the game was going to come out either way. Most of the marketing for the game had been done. Everything was looking good unit production wise in terms of it being a successful launch. What really made us interested in the investment was, one, we met with a lot of people, and we liked you guys very much, and two,
thanks, Brandon.
That's the core of it. If you don't like the people you're working with, what's the point? And then two, it was trying to manage our appetite for risk, and you don't want to be in a situation as a creative where there's no risk, because then you end up creating without bounds. You end up overproducing everything you're doing, and you don't want to be at a point where there's so much risk that it infringes on the creative. And so we try to keep a constant internal barometer of how much risk, and we wanted post-launch to make sure that we had we weren't choosing our next project and how we were working on the current project based on the financials as much as we wanted to choose on the direction that sort of VR took us. To go back to the previous question about multiplayer, at the time everybody was saying that VR was very antisocial, and that because they saw pictures of people with masks on, so they might think this must be isolating. And so at the same time that we're thinking of what do we want to creatively make, we were also thinking of what's good for VR, because we want the platform as a whole to succeed, and because it's what we want to be creating on for years to come. And so we felt that there was a gap. Multiplayer games weren't being addressed, and so we're like, let's tackle that and make sure that's ready for launch, and so that nobody, and you notice in 2016 nobody's saying that VR is antisocial anymore. So
yeah,
it's good.
When you made the decision to go exclusive Vive, at least for launch, what really drove that decision for you?
For us, so it dates back to when we first were exposed to sort of high-end VR. We went up to Valve's offices and saw the original room. And at the time, the room was very interesting, and we saw it as a separate demo. They were starting to work on hand-track controllers, and we sort of saw that as the minimum viable product as a development target. The immersiveness of the display is very novel. to look around a game, but anything that you develop with a gamepad inherently can be ported to non-VR as well. It's just not quite as immersive. You don't quite have that same feeling of being inside of the experience. But as soon as you add the track controllers, that's when it becomes a totally new target platform. And we were looking for something that was as different to develop for as, you know, the transition from 2D gaming to 3D gaming. We wanted that big of a revolution of what we were designing for, so that we're not looking to refine and perfect, you know, existing gameplay mechanics and take a bit from this popular game and this popular game and try to put them together. Instead, we can invent entirely new genres, entirely new gameplay mechanics, and exist in a space that's not saturated. So that's why we targeted the the track controllers. For us were the only way to go.
And what was the biggest lesson for you when you and now that you're kind of on the other end of the development of Hover Junkers, you've launched it. It's been really successful. It seems like people are loving the game. I'm loving the game. Is there anything that you guys would do differently, either development process wise or design choices or anything like that?
Design choices. There's been some interesting lessons. There's a lot of things design wise that we, as the gamers in us, I think we thought collectively with all the other gamers sort of rejected. For example, we didn't want to put a very invasive tutorial in the game. We wanted there to be a tutorial video, but we always kind of complain when it's like, okay, you launch a new game and they teach you, all right, press this to jump, press this to do, and you're like, I know, and you're trying to go as fast as you can. So we deliberately avoided that because we always thought that the collective voice was saying not, you know, that they didn't want that. Then feedback after the game, we got a lot of feedback where people are like, oh, there's no tutorial, I can't figure out how to play it, and we're like, but what we kind of kept hearing, we were trying to address it, and so then we realized we're like, and that's why every game has a super invasive tutorial. So future games will have an invasive tutorial. So lessons like that, just on the difference on what the consumer's voice is asking for, and then their actions speak differently. In the same way, just the general movement of the mid-range of games is happening, and it's happening in movies. It's happening in every single different aspect of entertainment, but you sort of have a lot more on the indie side, and then you have your big tent poles that come out. And so as far as the scope of development to target for, we're seeing a lot of pressure from the audience where they'd rather have lots of small games and a few big ones than an assortment of small, medium, large games. And so we sort of with Hover Junkers targeted medium, and I think in the future we'd either go large or small. And so try to stay out of the middle range quite as much. Little lessons like that.
Yeah. So I guess one question that probably, because we're talking about the financing that we did and the investment that we made, might be useful for you to cover for other people out there with VR companies. Is there advice that you could give them for where to look for financing if they're looking for financing, whether to look for financing, or things that they can do or say that will convince people to give them money, shirts that they should wear, or anything like that?
The movement we've been seeing is that back in the glory days of the West Coast of entertainment, 100 years ago, the idea of, oh, you go sing in this, local smoky bar and the talent scout will find you and, make you, discover you right there and make your life for you. Those days have long passed, since we have such greater analytics, and then with the emergence of the internet, with YouTube, with social media, the tools are there to build an audience beforehand, and the tools are there to market your game. You look at Steam, you have the Greenlight program, etc. So I think there's very little fruit to be had in looking for financing very upfront. You're going to have to be able to find a way to get yourself to a certain point, in terms of there has to be a level of interest, there has to be sort of a product, something there, because there's enough people that have that there's no reason to look for that visionary that just has a vision on paper. You have to produce something, whether it's a game, whether it's a movie, whether it's a short, something has to be created that has not only been created, but there's an audience that's actively interested in it. The beauty is it's easier than ever to do that, because with the internet bringing that, the internet also brings a better ability to collaborate. A lot of the VR teams that we saw produce products were working in multiple cities, putting teams together of 6 people, one person, different cities, using a constant Skype call every day to work together. And so it's easier to find like-minded individuals. You just have to find some time to carve out of your weekends, your days, and keep producing something until you have that product that's interesting enough. So I'd say it's not even worth spending the time trying to look for that investment until you have something that's standing out in the crowd and already making it a no-brainer for the investor.
Yeah. So what's next for you guys?
What's next? We have a number of content expansions. We put a roadmap out for Hover Junkers. The first one came out about a month ago now, and we have the next one coming out in the next couple of weeks. And then we have a single-player campaign coming out towards the end of the year for Hover Junkers. We also have a secret project that I'm not going to go into too many details, but we have a smaller scope game that we've been working on. Kind of there'll be a proper announcement for it in time, but we're looking at around October for when that comes out, and so we've been having fun putting that together. Well, it'll make sense why we're being so secretive about this one. As far as Hover Junkers, we were very, very public, and this one we're actually recording the same materials that we did for Hover Junkers, but we haven't released any of it because of the nature of the title. We don't want to show too much of what's in it, just because we want people to be able to experience it on day one, unwrap it. So that's coming. So essentially, a small project and more expansions for Hover Junkers is what the focus is. All in all, we want to accelerate development. We want to be able to, our creative process is that we come up with so many ideas, and you can only execute one for every 10 of them, and the faster we execute, the more of those ideas we can do. And the VR space is evolving so rapidly that for us to try to design a game that would come out in 2018 right now, I have no idea what an exciting game in 2018 would look like, but I can tell you early 2017, I can envision that. So it makes sense to take a smaller development cycle on games and really let the space with rapid turnover in terms of just trying different things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, trying different genres, and just rapidly prototyping things out and developing them into completed projects.
Cool. So if people are out there watching and they want to work with you guys, either they're looking for a job or they've got a game idea or they want to do some kind of a partnership, what should they do? Pester you on Twitter?
Twitter is always good. We always find you bring up the idea. That's always like a pet peeve. There's so many people that think that they want to be the idea guy. No one's ever looking for an idea guy. It's so if you want to be the idea guy, you have to start executing your ideas on your own. As far as developing, most of the people,
I have to take idea guy off my resume.
Idea guy, yeah. I'm your idea guy, yeah. No, it's we find that a lot of people we end up working with, we have a relationship over a period of time. People send us things. The most effective way is usually when people link us their work on Twitter, like, hey, this is something I'm working on, check it out, and we kind of follow the progress of things, see who's capable of doing and learning on their own, just because everybody we work with, ultimately we expect to be able to use Google, learn new software, don't be afraid of that dark gray user interface, like pick up new stuff and move on their own.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for us. Thanks for watching out there, who all you people out there in internet land. That's it.
Yeah, we have 17 seconds left. We're out of time. I was keeping an eye on chat as we were going. Thank you, everybody who showed up and have been checking out the stream. And enjoy the rest of your GamesBeat.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.